Yeah, I think I'll just give it a minute because I think there might be some people coming. Everyone's attention. We'll open this meeting of the Sittingbourne Area Committee here on Thursday, 26th of June at the Avenue Theatre. Could I ask that any members or officers in physical attendance with an electronic device could please mute it to avoid any feedback, and could remote participants, well, I'm not sure we have any, keep their camera and microphone off unless they wish to speak, as this could affect the quality of the meeting. This meeting is being live webcast and the recording stays on the council's website. So I'd like to formally welcome everyone to this evening's hybrid Sittingbourne Area Committee meeting. The following Swellborough Council officers are in attendance: Head of Housing and Community Services Charlotte Hudson, and Policy and Engagement Officer Janet Dart. I'd also like to welcome Kent County Councillor Chris Palmer, Division Member for Sittingbourne North. Welcome, Chris. Are there any representatives of local organisations in attendance who would like to introduce themselves at all? Yep. Milton Regis Society, welcome. Thank you very much. If you would like to speak on... Oh, yep.
Quite a few people swear well to the main one, and also Melton Court.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. Welcome, Jackie. If you would like to speak on any item, please raise a hand, and I will invite you in turn to speak. Likewise, could anyone attending remotely mute their microphone until they speak and indicate on the message function if they wish to speak. So turning to agenda item 1, which is the emergency evacuation procedure. Please be aware of the evacuation procedures to follow in the event of emergency. There is no scheduled test of the fire alarm during this meeting. If the alarm does sound, please leave the building quickly without collecting any of your possessions, using the doors signed as fire escapes, and assemble outside where directed. Await instructions before re-entering the building. Should anyone require assistance in evacuating the building, please could you make yourselves known? No. Hello, Linda. I think you're joining us remotely. Could I just ask you if you could turn your camera off at this stage, just in case it might affect the meeting that you're trying to participate in, if that's all right. Okay, that's agenda item 1 covered. Agenda item 2, apologies for absence.
Yes, we have apologies from councillors Pollard, Parnell, Clark, Miller and Last.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other apologies anyone needs to give? No. Agenda item 3, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest from members? Yes, Councillor Winklis. Thank you very much, Councillor Winklis. Councillor Mishrick. Excellent, thank you very much. All other members, fine. Okay, thank you very much. Moving to agenda item 4, we have 2 sets of minutes to agree. Do members agree the minutes of the meeting held on the 27th of February 2025, minute numbers 687 to 697 as a correct record? And can I also ask if members agree the minutes of the meeting held on the 14th of May? Let's see what minute numbers those are.
30 to 30.
30 to 31. Oh, yeah, they're here. Agreed. Thank you very much. Now turning to agenda item 5, I'd like to invite Charlotte Hudson, the Head of Housing and Community Services, to give a short presentation on the customer access strategy. I will ask that if people have any questions, we take those at the end, if that's okay. Thank you very much. Charlotte.
Thank you, Chair. So currently at the council, we're refreshing our customer access strategy, and this is really around ensuring that our residents can contact us in the right way, in the right method, in the most cost-effective and efficient way. Actually, Andre Bowen is leading on this. He's the Service Improvement and Project Manager at Sittingbourne Council. But as I was attending, I said he could have the evening off from this area committee, and I would cover it. But just to sort of say, he has done the substantive amount of work on this. So the current strategy is actually quite outdated. It was last written in 2013, and as you will all know, quite a lot's changed since 2013. The technological advances and sort of the social norms post COVID-19. And just obviously we've got now changes coming with potential devolution, and just aligning ourselves with other councils and just comparing where we are. So we were tasked with refreshing the current strategy to make sure that it's fit for purpose for the organisation and our residents as well. So really just going to sort of go through very quickly here. Obviously there'll be a lot more detail in due course when the revised strategy comes to committee, but really just a bit of overview of how customers currently contact us and sort of the trends around that. There has been some consultation undertaken, so just some initial feedback on that, and then really just to give the area committee an opportunity to make sure that your viewpoints are included in the consultation if you haven't already participated in the public consultation or the member workshop. Just want to make sure that we captured everybody's views. So currently, this is how residents can mainly get in contact with us. So we have lots of access points, face-to-face, on 3 sites with limited opening hours at the moment. Obviously, telephone is probably one of our main contact points through our customer service centre, but also through other dedicated phone lines and out of our service for some functions. Email, a lot of emails into the organisation, which are very unstructured actually, and sometimes we can't always offer the best resident response because we're not capturing it in the right way, or they're not providing enough information at the first contact. Obviously, we've got our website and a lot of contact forms within there, so people can self-serve and ask, you know, I've had a missed bin collection, or I'd like to do report something, or pay a parking fine, or try and think of something more positive, pay their council tax. A lot of that can be done online, and of course we still accept post, and we do get a level of postal correspondence still. So just a little bit of an overview of sort of the trends around what we're doing, and these top 2 lines, it might be quite difficult to see here, but the orange line, which is sort of quite high at the top, but then coming down a bit, is telephone contact, and the sort of grey line that's intersecting that is the self-service, which is a sort of trend that we would want to see, and our customers, obviously, our residents favour those. And the bottom 2 lines are really email and face-to-face contact. As I mentioned already, there's been quite a lot of work done to try and get these strategy developed. So we started off with staff sort of focus groups, who, you know, the people that take the calls, the people that correspond with residents, just to find out what their interactions were like and just to try and get insights from them. Also contacted those organisations that share our building, or we share their buildings, to get their feedback. Ran through a member workshop, just again to get a bit of a steer around viewpoints. So we obviously know that members have a lot of contact, a lot of casework from residents and what's going to them because they haven't been resolved through other council services. Sort of a review at our senior management team level, but then and I'll go into in more detail, is the public perception surveys and also this consultation process before we finalise the document and bring it to committee for approval. So we've been running a survey, and it was published on the 5th of May and closed on the 16th of June. It was advertised all through our social media and sort of through newsletters, and we also put posters up at all of our access points in Swell House, the Alexander Centre, but also our leisure centres as well as Gateway. And We facilitated sort of paper copies, really conscious that people that might have low digital skills or lack access to devices or the internet didn't get excluded, because we need to make sure we capture those individuals and our services enable contact from those as well. And as well, CBS just next door advertised that out to sort of vulnerable groups as well, and also offered to facilitate completing any applications that might need to be done. Had a really good response for a survey consultation. Normally we're kind of in single, just about double digits, but we've had 104 online form responses, 25 paper responses. We did offer, in conjunction with Swell Community Leisure, a free gym, swim and workout class membership giveaway, and that people could opt into that. 34 people opted in to take part in that as well, just a free 7-day pass, just to try and encourage participation as well. But really what we wanted to know from the consultation and to gain insights from yourselves today is these questions that are up here really. And what methods do residents use the most to contact us for information or assistance? Sorry, it's taking up all. We'll get there. You know, how satisfied are you? Again, a lot from members here. You see when maybe things don't work out, so getting your feedback on that, but also our residents here who've tried to contact us directly, and how satisfied are individuals with the current methods? What time is the most convenient to contact us, and what additional assistance might be required? And again, what other solutions might be out there? And also really important is, do residents have access to both the internet and devices? Because we know a lot of people might have devices, but because of like digital poverty, might not be able to have data or enough credit to be able to do those sort of things. And are residents capable? Do they have the digital skills to be able to access these services? So they were really the questions. If there's any feedback here today, I'd say the online survey and paper surveys have closed, but we just wanted to make sure that all area committees were aware of the consultation and had an opportunity to feed into it. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Charlotte. Are there any questions or comments from anybody at the moment? Yep, Councillor Winklis.
Basically, how many still coming?
So Telephone is our second largest contact. So trying to look at the 2024 data, probably about 80,000 contacts annually. Yeah. So it's a really highly used service. I think one of the things that we need to consider is which services we offer via telephone and which ones we don't, because we obviously are increasing our self-service and making sure, you know, how people do that. But yeah, there's a lot of contact.
Just respect follow up. How's that compared with email?
With email's really low, but I would say I think we have quite a lot of difficulty in capturing what we would probably call accurate data, because where it's unstructured, it might go to lots of different officers, whereas with our contact centre, if you phone into our customer service line, it's automatically logged. So we've got a really high level of confidence that number is correct. But with emails, that's just what's come into the customer services team without including the rest of the organisation, and the rest of the organisation gets an awful lot of emails. So it's about us looking at how we do that more effectively.
Yeah, I think obviously the important aspect of this review is getting the right balance, because we don't want to see a situation, obviously, where all of these options aren't available to people. What we need to make sure is that the people that are really unable to access the internet or don't feel confident in doing that have the option to get through when they call up, and that they can be, you know, someone can speak to them quite promptly. I think that's probably one of the complaints that many big organisations have had in the past is, well, I've sat on the phone waiting, and they end up giving up. Whereas lots of us will find it quite easy. you know, you're on the train to, I would do this, I'm on the train to work, I've got a list of things that I want to do, so I'll complete online forms, get them over, whether it's KCC or Swale or some other organisation. That's quite convenient for people, and also it means that you've got that option of reporting something in outside of working hours, which is obviously much more convenient for lots of people, or at the weekends, whereas therefore then keeping the phone lines open for people that really do need to use that option, I think is quite important. So I think obviously reviewing this is not to sort of totally scale down one thing or another, but as Charlotte said, it's about allocating resources so that the people that do need to use those various avenues all have those open to them. Were there any other contributions or questions that anybody wanted to make on this item? Yep, Kieran.
I'm wondering, would the phone service, would there be possibility of streamlining it? Because I have elderly family members and elderly residents who have spoken to me about how confusing it is to actually get through to the right thing. And I've had the same issue myself. I'm just wondering, would there be a way with streamlining the service, making it more simple for people to?
I think that, I mean, everything's really valuable feedback, and it's trying to understand. And I take it that sometimes services can be process mapped and recorded based upon how we would deal with it, rather than how a customer would naturally think of those things. And it's that sort of feedback that we need. And it's the same with website content. Is it logical for the end user, i.e. our residents, and how do we test those things? So I think understanding, if you've got, they tried to report this, us understanding that and getting that feedback means that we can review those services. Because sometimes what we would call it, a member of the public might call it something completely different, and it's about trying to match those things up so we can use the right language as well.
When I was growing up, there were so many avenues to go down, and what I wanted to inquire about, I didn't really know which one to go.
Which one to go? So it's that clarity.
One of them, and then they sent me somewhere else. Yeah. That happened for a lot of people. That's what takes a lot of time.
Yeah, I think it's that council language, isn't it, versus general. Yes. That's where we need to be challenged, because we know we're very embedded in the council language. So it's that feedback's really important.
Councillor Chris Palmer.
Yeah, I just want to ask. You said that the emails that come in from residents are quite low in comparison to anything else, and that you're hoping that things will move more into the direction of self-service. But is the self-service not still internet web-based? So people are reluctant to do emails. Are they going to be reluctant to go on to self-service? Because most self-service things I've been on, they still require details like your email address. I just wondered how those two are going to work together against one oppose each other.
I suppose when we're talking about self-service, it could be directly knowing there's a form that you can complete with all the relevant information for each individual service. Whereas I suppose if you email the contact centre, then they need to pass it over to someone to contact you. So I suppose having that general option is just like having that catch-all option on the phone as well, where you're not quite sure who you do need to speak to, because even if you can't navigate on the website, that's also part of the issue, isn't it, is trying to navigate the website. But obviously I suppose if you're not going to be able to put in the information on a self-service form because you don't have an email address, for example, then that's why we need to keep the phone lines open for those people. I think it's really important that we preserve that for those people that, for whatever reason, it also might just be helpful for them to be able to talk through an issue. I think we often have residents contact us that they just need to discuss it with someone before they even put the complaint in, and that can be helpful sometimes. So I totally take your point that you can't assume therefore that directing people to self-service if email is low is the right way to do. But I suppose could be more that some of those emails go to the self-service because they know who to contact in the first place. But again, if the website's not clear, and I think that is one of my concerns, is whether the Swale website is really as user-friendly as it ought to be. I think that's something we
issues and residents that Swale websites really difficult to navigate.
Yeah. And there can be stuff that's out of date sometimes. And I think us alerting people to that as promptly as possible is really important. So maybe there's a bit more discussion we need to have as members about really what we want to be able to get out of having the website for what is it that people need to contact and where does that need to be, you know?
Once you get through the right person, the staff.
Exactly.
Really knowledgeable and
Yeah.
know where to send you.
Yeah.
Just
And it's something like you need to be 2 clicks away from your answer, not any more than that, and it's just people give up. Yep, Councillor Mission.
Well, does the council incorporate AI in their self-service service? Or is that something they could look into to say?
Through you, Chair. Yeah, so one of the things that so Andre, he's been looking into that, and we are working with sort of our ICT colleagues who are in the shared service with Maidstone and Tunbridge Wells, and there's they are looking at various products that would integrate with our existing CRM system as well. So I think the emerging strategy is coming to say that we would explore those things more, and it may be that we might need to trial some things, maybe on just one service that's quite simple rather than just do everything. But it's just say we obviously need to be careful if we're taking people's personal data and things like that. We need to make sure that we've got all the safeguards around those things. But I think there is an ambition to make sure that we are using things like AI if it's appropriate to, and yeah, look at how we can integrate that. So kind of more of an ambition of the strategy, even though we don't do that currently.
I'll imagine at the local government association conference next week, everyone's going to be talking about AI and how they think it's going to save the day. Ultimately, you need to have the sort of reassurance that if a human decision is required at the end, there's a human there to take it. And I think that's the main thing, isn't it? Is it can massively reduce the admin involved. Councillor Gibson.
Yeah, so mine's more of a common question, quite frankly. And when we look at it in 10 to 12 years, we were to do this. I'm really, really too enthused by what we are doing, and what I've said, we're almost during the day. And there will be a whole plethora of people with different views out there, without a shadow of a doubt. Almost every door you knock on would have a different idea, so I wouldn't think but the one thing that we've been taking many of the responses, and you know, sort of 90 of responses, but actually, it's well done. You know, to go quite often, just to get based on that.
Yeah.
I think after that, it's a big volume by people's interest. And even more than actually driving this.
Yeah, no, that's right. I think when we have budget consultations, it's barely in double figures, is it? And you know, and everyone's got views about how we raise money, spend money, and yeah, that's true. Were there any other questions or contributions from anyone? Yep, back there.
I think we have got. I don't think we've got videos and stuff. So yeah, we have been trying to do some work around working with Kent County Council on sort of that digital inclusion work, and there's been quite a lot of different models over various times, and working with sort of our voluntary sector partners such as UK and various others, just to see where we can support. But yeah, I think all those suggestions are really good.
Yeah, and actually, I think that's a really good suggestion for maybe when this is concluded, this process is concluded, that actually the comms put together something where it can go step by step about the different ways you can contact the council and what's involved or what you might need if you want to take that route. So yeah, that could be something that I think would be a neat way then of promoting what we do have available for residents to contact the council. And also I think people being clear as well about what Swale Council can deal with versus Kent County Council, because I can imagine that both organisations get a degree of correspondence where the resident then waits so many days to get the response, which is then basically it's somebody else's problem. And, you know, being able to be sure of that for people and directing them in the right place in the first place. I think, you know, when you go on the website, there are certain things that say, we can help with this. Kent County Council can help with this, and likewise on Kent County Council's website. But I think improving that the best we can as well, and that understanding may help and get people the right response sooner as well. Any other questions or comments on this before we move on to the next item? No? Okay, thank you very much. Thanks, Charlotte. So I think we're moving on to agenda item 6. which is the review of area committees. We do have another set of slides that Janet's putting up for us. I don't want to, dwell too much on the slides, but I just want to sort of give people a bit of background about what's happening. So area committees were established in 2019 after the elections that took place that cycle, and the first round of the meetings for the area committees took place a year later in September 2020, and there are 4 that cover cover Swale Borough, and obviously we're the Sittingbourne area committee. There's one for Sheppey, there's one for Easton, which is Faversham and surrounding villages, and Sheppey's on there twice on mine, and the other one's Weston, which is the western part of Sittingbourne and the villages around there. There are 4 meetings that take place for all of those committees each year. Traditionally, that's been February, June, September and December. Again, as we're reviewing all of this is up for grabs as part of the conversation about what we want to get out of these meetings. And I have my views, but I'm sure that everybody here will have their views as well. Membership includes all ward members for the relevant wards in that area, and also the invites are extended to in parish areas, the parish councils, and also to the KCC members. And obviously this is used as a forum where we want to encourage public attendance and participation. So that's why one of the agenda items later on is the public forum and questions submitted by the public. Initially, the meetings for the area committees took place remotely because of the pandemic, and this is something that we've continued as an aspect of how we undertake these meetings, so that they are hybrid. All of the Swale meetings you can tune in online. So that has proven quite popular in the past, and wherever we hold these meetings, we make sure we have this equipment here so that that's an option for people. I think recently we've seen that the number of online attendees has tended to drop off a little bit. Obviously, it's great that we have more people coming in person, but I think it's something that's underutilized and people aren't necessarily aware that that's an option open to them. For the area committees, they have a terms of reference, which is outlined here. I'll just run through them very quickly. Develop a work programme to enhance core services within the area and take a report to council on an annual basis to provide an update on progress. Agree spending decisions in relation to specific funding allocated to members of the area committee. Provide area intelligence to the Policy and Resources Committee and heads of service, and assist with policy development on relevant matters. So it is a decision-making committee. Recommendations can go to full council. Whilst their committees were originally allocated budgets, this isn't really something that we're able to do at the moment. So this is another reason why we do need to undertake this review. And moving on to that funding slide. So it says here, for the first 3 years, each area committee was awarded funding. Criteria was agreed which applicants needed to meet for funding applications to be considered, and area committees would vote to agree how that funding would be allocated. In total, over £500,000 was allocated by the area committees over about 2.5 years. And as part of the budget setting process more recently, because of the financial pressure that all councils are under, it's no longer been something in recent years that the council has been able to allocate. So whilst we aren't allocating funds at these meetings, we can still make decisions that can be referred to full council. So we do have an important role, but I think really the important aspect of these meetings is the public engagement, and we really need to strengthen the role that these meetings have in bringing various aspects of the community together, to work together to deal with some of the challenges that we decide as a committee are really important to the area. So as you can see here, there's an important function to engage with public and in parished areas, which Sittingbourne isn't, parish and town councils and community groups. as we've had this evening about the customer access strategy, these are important forums for us to bring along new policies and strategies and get people's feedback, get people discussing what they think might be missing or what they think's good. And as I said, one of the important items on the agenda is that there's a public forum and the opportunity for members of the public to bring questions and suggestions to the area committee. So a summary here around the purpose of area committees is to enhance quality of life and of council services in the relevant area and to bring greater local insight to bear in council decision making. Obviously, with the government looking at local government reform and that potentially at some point in the next few years, Swale will be part of a larger unitary authority. They have also said that this is an important aspect to consider going forward, in that you have groups and committees that meet based on their locality to do exactly what is outlined here. So if we get this right, we're well placed to make sure that local people maintain that really important local engagement and local voice and connection with their local members. Following recommendations by the Council's Constitutional Working Group, which is as exciting as it sounds, and for a discussion at full council, we agreed that there would be a review of area committees undertaken. The purpose of that is, the purpose of bringing this item to the area committee this evening is so that we can discuss how effective we've been finding our engagement with area committees and looking at those ideas for the sorts of things that we think they can do, how they can be improved, what they could evolve into. So moving on to the next slide, we have
just trying to get it back.
That's all right. We, in a moment on the screen, there will be some questions which might help people to sort of think about the sorts of things that we should be considering as part of this review. As obviously the chair of the area committee, I'm part of that review with the other 3 area committee chairs. We met yesterday evening and we've had our say, but I think it's really important that obviously the members who are part of the area committee and the members of the public and members of community groups who take the time out of their evenings to participate in the area committee also have their say. So any moment now, I'm sure those questions will appear behind me.
This is the one. Just skip through. Apologies, I've had to sort of start one with it. Okay.
There we are. Questions. So obviously it's not limited to this. If anyone has any initial thoughts, any members or members of the public about what they have found helpful about area committees, particularly in the last couple of years where it hasn't been allocating the funds that it had in the previous cycle. And yeah, anything that you think might contribute to some of these questions or anything else. I've got Councillor Winklis and Councillor Watson.
Yeah, thanks. This up. As you said, when they were first set up, as you just said, there was funding available through the various different groups. So that was it's not for companies. Where we are now, I feel but you must have more members coming. You could advertise better. I mean, us as a council, advertising better, get it out there. I know we have had various different organisations come and speak, like police, bus company. I think that's what, if these are going to continue, this format, you've definitely got to get more organisations coming and attending. That's what I think people come here to listen to. But that's
Yeah, thank you very much. And yeah, I think perhaps there's been stuff even in the last couple of years I can think of. We've had some good discussions, but there's also been some good work coming out of the area committees. We in Sittingbourne, for example, after the meeting with the police, I think in December 2023, we set up a town centre meeting involving Sittingbourne councillors, which worked with the police and the homelessness team, licensing team, community safety team, cleansing team, to really put a focus on the issues that people have been experiencing. We've had the tennis club come along and push that, which started to get some progress as well. So things can be achieved still, even though it's not necessarily funding allocating committee. And I think that comes from partnership working, which these could still be a good form. But I totally agree with you. I think we need to, one, put more effort into advertising this to people. But two, I think all members need to make sure that all the organisations that we interact with are aware that we're able to promote this to people, but they need to know why. And I think some of the communication that we put out about the area committees needs to, mention some of the things that have happened as a result of people coming along to these meetings. I've got Councillor Watson, then Councillor Richard Palmer.
Thank you, Chairman. So the good things that I think have come out of the area committee has been where we've had speakers in, and as you pointed out, Chair, when we had police here, we did get a lot of response coming from that. We do have a very good town centre meeting we now have. When we had the bus companies here as well, we were able to hold them to account, especially you did, Jackie, to what was going on. And I think we need to look at, and I've said this at a number of meetings, we need to look at making sure we're being accessible to everyone. No disrespect, I know Milton Regis, you come every time. Thank you for coming. We're looking at if there are other community groups we could be reaching out to for them to come to our area committees, and we need to make sure that we're making them interesting for people to come to. So I know that on Sheppey, they had a meeting that was designed around the school place, and that got a very big attendance. As councillors, we know what are probably going to be things that people want to come and talk about. So we need to, with your help with that, Chair, to look at what's going to bring funds on seats. How are we going to get people in here? Because the more people we get into area committees, the more it's going to flourish, and the more we are going to say to residents, look, this is your opportunity to come and talk to us. We also, as I said, need to look at accessibility. So I'm on Pathfinder's group, and I make a point of telling them when we've got area committee, so that they know that if they want to come, they can come. But if they want to have points that they want me to bring up, I can. And as Councillor Winkler said, as councillors, we should be going out there and promoting our area committees a lot more. We can't just leave for the officers to promote. Us as councillors have that responsibility. We need to take ownership of that, go out and promote the area committee. Otherwise, they're not going to reach them.
Yeah, and perhaps part of that is that people don't really know, as you sort of said, why they should attend this. What would they get out of this? And there's lots of opportunities. We know there are, but we need to be showing those to people and detailing those to people. I even wonder sometimes, I've raised this before, whether the name is particularly clear to people about why they should come along and attend. You can keep pushing and pushing and pushing. If you pushed that there's a public meeting with the police, you may get more people along than come along to Sittingbourne Area Committee. We've got Councillor Richard Palmer, then Councillor Tim Gibson.
I think you may have hit the nail on the head. I look at Sittingbourne Area Committee. It's a full committee. The public can come along and have a good say. But if people can have any input on the members of that committee, maybe you would get better response and attendance as a local engagement forum. So I know they used to have, but then, and I think Karen was right. It's great if you could say, well, when we do something for school, we do something
Yeah.
for education help, foster care, all sorts of things. But to have people there and the police, where the public feel, well, if we come in and raise an issue, we raise that issue, and it's up to them that forum to take it away and to challenge the people who should be looking at it. So maybe the structure and the name might, rather than having a nice formal meeting.
Yeah.
It should be a friendly chat, what's your issues, and here's some information about things coming up.
Yeah. And I've, sort of raised as well that perhaps there should be a sort of networking opportunity at the start as well, so that, as you say, if there's theming of things, we can put a real effort into making sure there's groups that have an interest in that. And again, members of the public will know that there's other experts or community groups in the room who they can talk to, share their experiences, raise questions, get advice. There's lots of learning that groups can share amongst each other, and this is a perfect place that we could do that. So I've got Councillor Gibson, and I've got Jackie and Jenny.
So I won't repeat what Richard has just said, but he's absolutely right, and you did too as well. I want to use terminology. So if you says we're having a committee, then naturally think, well, in many cases, I'm not good enough to be on a committee. I mean, that sounds very important to me. And so, again, that can turn people off. If you said it was a forum, great. But I'm thinking about the person now. So our resident out there, what things impact on their day-to-day life? And that's where we should be drawing our strands. So who we invite here? So, water companies. There are lots and lots of issues with water just going for us. What has happened? How do we do it? How do we get onto that list as an elderly person and a resident that needs urgent water, what's everybody else, and electricity? The gas people, again, we see it all the time, SGN network, so we could do those. Just mobility, getting out of the town. So that then feeds into those services. It also feeds into services. And I think all of those strands, if you were to just take a person in isolation and look at those and take a walk through their life, so from youth to elderly stages, and just pick up those things, because that way you won't miss anybody who should be starting to go through the elderly, and also all of those strands should be covered. Now, clearly, you can't do that all before meeting. Yeah, I understand that. But for me, that should be kind of the golden ribbon that kind of runs through the golden thread that runs through it all.
Yeah, thank you very much. Got Jackie, then Jenny.
I understand it. I think that's what I most non-members were in there usually. Now there's a lot of new people moving to Kemsley in the last couple. It might be, and also Kemsley's got a lot of issues that they want looking at. And I think something like that might be an idea to put that in. And you might be able to get all the new people on there. And also there is necessarily a major parking problem, but a lot of people in that area could actually walk.
Yeah.
Transport obviously is one, but
yeah,
that's something I'm looking into.
Yeah, I think if we're being honest, Councillor Carnell probably put a lot of effort into getting people from some of the groups he's involved with along to that meeting, which helps. And there was people that I spoke to in Kemsley Fields, as you referenced, and some of the newer parts of the area who came along to that meeting. So, yeah, I do agree with you, and I think it just shows that reinforces the point that Councillor Winklis and Councillor Watson made, that we as members have to make sure that we're getting that out there and getting people along and making them understand what the purpose of these meetings are. So going back to Councillor Gibson and Councillor Palmer's point, the terminology and the structure really does need looking at. If it was just called Sittingbourne Area Public Meeting or something, I don't know, maybe more people would come along because they understand what that is. Jenny.
And these meetings are advertised,
Yeah, I do think we have to push them more. Yeah, Chris Palmer.
Obviously, I'm new at KCC, but a lot of the people I work with are really committed to whatever cabinet they're on. Like, I'm children's services, and I would be happy to go to a forum and talk about my portfolio. If people had questions about early years, early education, fostering adoption, all that sort of stuff. I do know that there are other cabinet members that would also, and committee members that would also be happy to attend to talk about the things that, so from my experiences, things that are upsetting people most, they want to talk to somebody face to face, is education, school places, highways. They seem to be the two main things at the moment.
Yeah.
But the highways have been an issue in the regions. The highways, I was approached. I've spoken to the Director of Highway Services, and I haven't spoken to Tony yet, but I'm organising a meeting between the two board members of Milton Regis, myself and the Highways Manager, to discuss the issue that they've got. And once we get information, it'd be good to get people in to tell the community, this is what's happened and this is what's been resolved.
Exactly.
The outcome.
Yeah.
Because very often you contact somebody and you don't know the final outcome. You have to know and put your idea across, and they say, thankfully, you don't hear anything else.
Yeah, I think that was something that was also raised last night by one of the other area committee chairs, is that as part of the comms around these meetings, there needs to be a "you said we did" aspect to it, which is exactly what you're describing. These issues are raised, this is the result of that. And I think we also have to look at the agenda items. So if you're making the effort, whether it's you or an officer from that area coming along to speak, we have to make sure that we advertise that well. And I think part of what would make Janet's life a bit easier supporting the area committees and the agenda setting is that if we can agree themes for the year ahead, and that not all 4 area committees are having the same one at the same time, because then you've got to try and get around 4 area committees in 2 weeks, and with your other commitments that might not be possible, but you might be able to do it across the year. Exactly.
School places are announced in May, June, July time. That's when all the emails come in because they can't get the travel and they can't get the right school. So if you know that that's coming up, then that is a perfect opportunity for the June area.
Exactly. And I think it's fair to say in the past, we've never been quite sure whether ultimately the people we've invited will then do it. They pull out a week or two, and we could put loads of effort into promoting something which then doesn't happen. So if we can get those things nailed down as a programme in advance, so that everybody involved has plenty of notice, that may assist as well. Yep, Councillor Gibson.
One of the key successes for me, I think, within the Sittingbourne has been that it's never ever been a shouting match. So working with how long, being treated with respect, dignity, and positivity, whether we've agreed or disagreed with their viewpoints. It's never been about finger pointing. That is our role as councillors in other forums, is to get that message across. And of course, people will still come back if they've felt fairly welcome and comfortable in the process. So people might forget what you said, but they never forget the way you made them feel. And I think that's a really important thing. I can honestly say I've definitely had that vibe in this committee right from day one. So that's important that continues.
Yeah, I think the important thing is everybody's here because we live in the same place. So everybody wants to see it better. So
and just about Tim just said, I think it's really good, and I've told this to all the people here as well, but I think it's important for the public to see it non-political.
Yeah.
We all want the same for the best of the residents, and we're all happy to work together to achieve that.
Yeah.
That's important.
Another contribution from the back there.
possibly hosting. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's been an interesting point as well. Yesterday was discussing, the fact that these meetings move around and whether actually it's of a huge advantage to people or whether it confuses them actually about not knowing where it's going to be each time. I understand particularly on the island, for example, that they, you want to try to accommodate communities where it can be much more difficult to try and get about, but in Sittingbourne, it might not be as much of a challenge. So I think that is another point that does need more conversation with people. There's lots of practical aspects to it, making sure they've got good enough Wi-Fi or that the space is appropriate for us to have a hybrid thing. That's unfortunately ruled a couple of venues out in the past, which is a shame. So we struggle, for example, to find a suitable venue in some of the Sittingbourne wards, which is a shame. So then we end up in effect meeting in some places that are still just based around the high street in Sittingbourne when, like you say, not everybody's able to necessarily get to those, which again, I really think promoting the online attendance to people and showing that actually online attendees do contribute, they can have their say, they can ask their questions here. I think that's really important side of it, but I do think that's something that needs a bit more conversation. Actually, I think even the meeting and the attendees of the meeting helping to decide some of the future things that they would like to discuss at future meetings would also be a really important. Making sure that it's their decision would be a really important point, I think, to explore as well about that. Yep, Councillor Winklis.
Things I know some time ago, about the little British week, and I obviously being very fortunate. It's whole, but it's pretty simple for I think there's problems with the IT.
Yeah. And that was the other issue as well, unfortunately, with Kemsley, is we had some very talented tap dancers in the room next door the whole way through the meeting. They were fantastic, but it was sometimes a bit distracting, or, you've got a brass band practicing next door because, it's a community venue, it's a community hub, it's well used by regular groups. We were in their way more than anything else, actually. So it is something that we have to consider. I, again, suggested Addisham Green, the Clock Tower Hall. That's also not a venue that at this stage we would be able to use either because of the IT issues. So this review isn't going to be rushed. We are going to make sure that we do it in good time because we want to make sure that, if area committees are to continue, we get on with it. But this isn't something that we're just going to, look at over the summer and make any rash decisions about. I think there's an intention to go out to members of the public, to community groups, to businesses. We don't really push these with businesses, so great forums to connect people, get their views over the summer, and then at the next area committee, hopefully we'll have something to feedback as well about what they're saying. So again, a plea to everybody in this room that when this goes live in terms of getting people's views, this survey, if we could really ask as many of the groups that we're engaged with, that we work with, many of our residents, to respond to that, to get their views, then all the better, because we can hopefully come up with something that will have lots more attendees and lots more outcomes from it. I think that's the really important thing, as Chris Palmer said, it's people knowing that they've said something happened, and then they will want to come back again and know that this is a worthwhile use of their Thursday evening. If that's okay, then we'll move on to agenda item 8, which is the local bus forum minutes for noting. You'll find the latest. I've skipped an agenda item. Maybe that was Freudian, I don't know. Agenda item 7 is the local government reorganisation update. If we've got any insomniacs in the room, I would suggest you read it this evening. It will help potentially on a muggy evening like tonight. But no, seriously, you will find in your agenda packs an update on local government reorganisation. We are hoping to provide a fuller update at the September meeting, but again, that all depends on other discussions elsewhere and other timelines elsewhere. But on local government reorganisation, does anybody have any questions, particularly members of the public, about where we are with what the government is consulting on at the moment. No, I think it's fair to say there's quite a lot of work that's got to be done between the district councils, the county council, and in terms of also getting the direction from government about what we need to do for when. There's a bit more clarity around that now, but you know, there's still things that we're having to find as we do it. So yes, hopefully there'll be another update in September, and obviously people have their opportunity to ask questions at that meeting. Then we move on to agenda item 8, which is the local bus forum minutes for noting. You'll find the latest minutes from the local bus forum in the agenda pack. We've also got our representatives on the forum, Councillor Winklis and Councillor Watson, here. Is there anything further that either of you would like to add? Councillor Winklis.
Yes, years ago, that came in on the bus. That's all I like. Very interesting, very, very confident, very full company. But my overall question of it was that so these buses cost them. The bus company was basically saying they haven't got necessary money to invest in the technology, and the bus was on loan manufacturing. That well worthwhile. Many bus councils went on the one. Some didn't go. It's very important. But might do three policies, some this summer particularly, to get to that point, I think this has got to be the way forward. But the investment has got to be there. There's a decent operating company on fire. No profit.
No, and I think the benefits as well for those, particularly in Sittingbourne, given the amount of congestion we have, is any fewer fumes from a bus sat in traffic will probably be better. But Councillor Mishra.
I just want to add to that, I think it was about £150,000 per bus. Buses were very good. They were very well aircon, so good for summer. There, a lot of access to disabled people, and they're very quiet and very smooth. It's something that we should be investing in. So we should have. It's just a shame out the money.
Or maybe it's something again that should be raised and taken forward to the government to say, you know, where exactly does this then fit in the agenda that you want to see? There is capital funding available in investment in bus services. It just obviously hasn't come our way on this occasion. So we want to make sure that it does in future. If there's aircon, I don't have to peel myself off one of the leather seats on the way back from Kemsley. Sometimes that'd be great. Any other points about the local bus forum? No. Now move on to agenda item 9, matters arising. You'll also find it's this bit here, isn't it? The progress on matters arising in your agenda pack. Does anyone have any questions? Only 4 things on there. On number 2, Periwinkle Mill, I think lots of people hopefully have seen the investment from the UK Shared Prosperity Fund and the difference that's made there. It's great that we were able to use some of those funds. I sit on that working group. It's great that we were able to use some of those funds so that the funding that had been secured by the Sittingbourne Society, along with that, was able to help protect that heritage asset. And the area just looks so much nicer for it. I know that the planting that they put there struggled a little bit with the dry weather, but hopefully that will still come through at some point. Councillor Cheeseman.
Then when they were struggling to raise money and they were going down there and preparing bits and then that all stopped, and it's so many years. It's lovely to see it now. No, it's great. And you know, I spoke to Councillor Miller about it the other day because it's still very much a volunteer-led project, even, you know, just to help maintain it. And both he and myself have offered to help them going forward with any of the other external works they want to do.
it's nice to see just how much better the site looks now that it's been cleared, and most of the hard work that went into delivering that still was by those volunteers that have been, sort of wanting to see that site put to better use for quite some time. So it's not the bells and whistles result that necessarily people had dreamed of years ago, but at least it's protected that in the area, and it smartens the area up quite a lot as well, which is a great use of those funds. We will now move on to agenda item 10, the public forum. I've had advance notice of a few questions where we've got responses which we can provide, but are there any members of the public who are here who would like to ask a question? Yes, Jenny.
Well, if you'll bear with me, actually, the building meters like what? But when the toilet is going to be opened in meters, they are needed. That one shopkeeper spoke to me and said that his people are employed in these premises and they're just in and out, they aren't customers.
Yeah. So on that one, I know that the Environmental Services and Climate Change Committee is going to be undertaking a review of all public conveniences. I think they've been supplied with data around usage and stuff like that. I think that's going to the next committee, which is on the 10th of July. I know that Councillor Winklis has raised some points about those with the chair of that committee as well. But obviously, whatever they discuss at that meeting will help to shape the future around those, and hopefully that will involve any sort of opportunity for people to feed in either through their councillors or whatever that committee decides. There's nothing obviously predetermined about any facility closing, but there could be, for example, some areas where that usage doesn't, necessarily stack up financially, or where towns or parish councils might wish to take those over, which obviously isn't something that would be under consideration in Milton. But yes, that will be an item for discussion Thursday, July the 10th. And yes, I would suggest that your ward councillors engage very closely on the future of those facilities. Are they still closed at the moment? Because I know they were closed for quite some time. Yeah. Sorry, Councillor Winklis, yeah.
So, as you know, I said this was to the chair of the environment parliament, and I raised it the fact that they've been shut for 3 or 4 months, and basically, I'm very concerned as a usage on it. So that's what I raised this, as you know.
Yeah. Yes, no, and I know there'll be all sorts of metrics involved as well, not just usage, but any issues around antisocial behaviour or ongoing maintenance costs and stuff like that. So there'll be a whole load of things that members will need to engage with on that. So yes, that's one coming up. And your other questions?
The high street is plagued with waste bins, permanently left out. Having spoken politely to people, they steadfastly seem to think it's their right to leave the high street. The bins spill over onto the pavement, and in the summer they smell foul. This has only occurred in recent years. Is it possible for them to be collected from the back of the property, where possible? For example, the post office, which is probably what happened in the past. We do understand that there is a difference between councillor bills and contract bills. But we didn't have so many contract bills a few years ago. And can anything be done about these large bills also?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I think obviously you approached it the best way in the first instance, which is always a friendly word is the best way to try and pursue things. And obviously, if it's not resolved the issue, then again, the ward councillors, I think, would probably be best advised to engage the council, who do have some powers over environmental issues, to, even though they're not necessarily council bins, and they do have private trade waste contracts, exploring those issues and avenues with them so that there may be better spaces which might not be the business's private property, but it could be Swale or KCC land where they could accommodate that if it means that it's not going to disrupt the high street scene or cause access problems to people. I think that's the best way to sort of look at pursuing that. So maybe the ward councillors could do a walkabout with you and take photographs of the problematic areas. They can then liaise with officers to see whether there's any land that Swale or KCC wouldn't mind accommodating those. Because again, it would all depend on what the individual contracts are and the contractors want to do in terms of how they collect those bins. Even if it's that the collection's done from the front, they would place them back there somewhere so that it's not a constant presence. I think that seems to be something sensible. Councillor Winklers.
Yes, I had. We've got it wrong. Went down. And
Yes, I mean, I would suggest taking some photographs and any photographs that you might have of possible alternative locations where they could go.
One, was they think that because they pay their council tax, they have rights to it.
Yeah, this is why, again, getting some photographs to see whether it's causing access issues, it's making people go into the pavement, if you can't get a wheelchair past. I mean, these aren't, unfortunately, necessarily powers where the council could find them. You know, other London boroughs might have those houses, not something that we have, but it may assist in them writing to them and say, actually, you know, there's an alternative available here. I think there could be just a little bit of joined up work where you can, I would really advise getting some photographs done, document the whole thing, almost as if you're walking down the high street and these are the problems you encounter. I think that would be really helpful. And your third question.
Yes. In recent months, we've been outraged by the oversized shop signs, the lurid colours that some shopkeepers use to paint the front. Some blatantly flout the area rules that some are unaware. Would it be possible to have a standardised set of rules, do's and don'ts, to be given to all or sent to all on a yearly basis? We say yearly because shopkeepers and residents come and go, and it would keep it in the forefront of everybody's minds. This would save a lot of work for the council and a lot of anxiety in general.
Yeah, again, thanks for your question. I know that the council has adopted some an approach to shop fronts and any new shop fronts within a conservation or heritage area. So where there are obviously planning breaches, that needs to be pursued in the proper way. And again, either residents can report that or your ward members can raise that as well. I think probably engaging the heritage officer at the council to see whether they can write out to them would be good. And I totally accept what you're saying about it being done yearly. I think it's the same as when there's problematic parking near schools, because again, there's a new intake each time, writing out, reminding everybody, this is how you need to be considerate to the school's neighbours. Again, likewise, I think a regular thing, whether something like along the lines of a do's and don'ts could be pulled together. I think that's a positive way of reinforcing what is expected of people. Perhaps that could be explored with the heritage officer. Councillor Mishuk.
Well, like I have been in contact with the heritage officer, as has Tony, trying to invite them down the high street because the violations are so blatant. And fines really to be issued on this because it's ruining the whole aesthetic of it. They have been very wishy-washy with the response, and I'm going to keep pressuring them to come, but I don't know how much I can pressure them to come.
Feel free to, mention it to me as well on email, because it's been raised at the area committee. We would like to hear at a future meeting about that. If we could make a note of that, please, Janet, that we want to aim to report back. We can say that this has been raised in a public forum. We can see if there's any support that we can give you. I'm sure that Tim will assist as well. It might be that officer hasn't been about. I know that they haven't been about as much until recently. So perhaps this is something that we can speak to them about, or somebody else in their absence, so that you can get the walkabout that you want and the site visit and explore what is open, particularly the do's and don'ts suggested in the question. I think that's a specific thing we'd like to bring back, because that could be something that could be used elsewhere as well. Councillor Winkles.
Yes, I'm also, there's Thompson as well. To come and have a walk around in High Street. I mentioned on street meetings, to actually come out with the High Street in the field, discussing it.
Yeah.
Two of the breaches I have reported that now come back with their engagement. It's 89 High Street and 98 High Street. We're still waiting on the other ones, but has gone through the channels, being reported.
Yeah.
Enforcement, as we know, planning, that's a big area, and it's enforcement.
Yeah, no, it is.
But it is all big.
Yeah, and planning enforcement isn't a statutory function as well. So we, it's good that we have this option to be able to do this. That's not necessarily something that all councils still provide. But I do think that there's a positive suggestion that's been raised in that question that merits exploring. So we'll make sure that we update people and bring that back. Then there was also a question submitted by Mr. Roger Harris, which I'll read out in his absence. Some time ago, the twinning boards were removed from the town welcome signs. As Sittingbourne is twinned with Ypres in Belgium, I consider this an insult and a sign of disrespect to Ypres. Why were the signs removed, and does the council intend to replace them in the very near future? Janet's been picking this up with officers after this came in. And I'll read out the response that we've had so far, which hopefully addresses this to his satisfaction. But obviously, I'm more than happy that once this is sent out to him, if he wishes to pick it up with me further, then we can see what we can do. So the response is that in 2011, Sittingbourne and Milton Twinning Association decided to call an end to their involvement in the town's association with the Belgium city after more than 45 years of ties between the two communities. However, there is still a relationship and a civil commitment as part of the civic journey of remembrance. The signs were replaced under a previous administration's Delivering for You scheme, which aimed at basic tidying up of the infrastructure across the borough. That included signs, benches, bins. At the time, the then cabinet discussed and agreed designs and opted to move away from civic style signs for preference over more modern styles. It was at that point that the twinning signs were removed. Officers are looking into the legalities around having a sign reflecting a more informal relationship as opposed to the formal twinning relationship that we had previously. The signs and posts have been designed in a way that subsequent panels can be added. So if it was found that it's legally permissible to have a sign reflecting an informal relationship with each, and the resident wants to suggest this to councillors, then they can seek a replacement by referring it to the Policy and Resources Committee to consider earmarking funds for the sign. These are the sorts of things as well, just to say that could be, if there is a future round of UK shared prosperity funding, that funding could be made available for that sort of capital spend. So it could be something that could be looked into. But again, we need to make sure that in putting this up, that it's not a breach of any sort of, I don't know, whether there's laws around twinning. But we do still foster that civic relationship. I know that the previous mayor, when there was the fundraising event on just recently, the bike ride, was invited to their town hall as the twin. So that's still recognised in some way. And I can't really imagine there's legislation outlining what you can actually do with that. But there could be legislation around highway signs that does need to be looked at. So we will get an answer to that. Then we also have Jackie Davison. Are you seeking to raise a question?
Basically, it was the transport situation to three lots of them. First of all, there's an interesting comment out. Need more information. First, there's a freight line coming up Newcastle going northwards into some of the smaller villages. And they decide said, oh, let's try and, the county then said, we need to try and run a web service. And network process, actually, what we can do is move the freight traffic, which has gone down, to make later in the day to use their pathways. So they said, that's a good idea, we'll do that. And then they put money in so they could build platforms and improve that. Started with a train, a two-car train. Within 3 months, it was so overcrowded that it covered it. They couldn't work, said, can't have any more trains. What we can do is length the platform. And they got the network road came in for that area and got the whole lot done within 1 weekend. And they got more trains and now there's still problems, it's still severe. They now realise they make such a lot of money on it. They want to try and get more, so they're looking, but they still can't put any plot without changing, without major timetable for the whole Tyneside area. But they can run them later, so I found another pathway that they use. And it's now going up quite late, and you just can't believe how many people are actually using it. And of course, it's helping because it's stopping people driving in their cars. And it stops, I think it went near the airport. The airport's obviously on the Tynemouth Metro, but there's another, it stops near the airport as well. So it's actually very well heavily used. I have been in contact with some councillors, different people. One, that one of the Faversham town councillors, it's Julian Saunders, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's Julian. Had a long chat. I've been discussing things with him, looking at things. What can we do? We've been giving him some ideas. He is now setting up plans to the local public transport area for Faversham, along with a couple of councils. And because originally the bus group was set up by myself, Jonathan Fire, and Richard came in. It was just a user then. And I wanted to get, I said, once to get some box, they might roll that was on it. And again, just somebody who was interested in transport. But what happened is, I managed to go and get 3 councils. And then what happened one year, about 6 of them got elected. So we need, that's something I'm looking at, trying to get other people around. This work is for them. So there's that, and there also now I've been speaking to this disagreement about something. One thing that spoke to Matthew Arnold, who was in contact. Fortunately, he's left Stagecoach now. He's now with Inside Buses. He said to me that 2 things he wanted was that if they could get the government issued passes, they get about existing put up to £1. Well, charges £3. You should get £3 basically. That's, I've already put that through the MP. It's in the process of going through along with all the other things you've got to do. But other circumstances. Now, I mentioned about, he said his attitude was that he would like to run more buses down here, but the X3 operates from Herne Bay. It can't possibly run us. They can't operate anymore down here because of having serious problems. The drive hours, leaving Canterbury, and by the time they get to Maidstone, it's late. They haven't got any turn-on time, and this is a big problem. They were looking into that, and seeing what they can do, but they're quite happily run things, but they need, they said they need a depot, sort of a small depot here that does things like cleaning, fueling, a restroom for the drivers or something like that. And minor maintenance facilities. And part and accommodation for buses.
Yeah.
And possibly now, I was talking to somebody from Network Rail, one not and said, "Oh, there's great demand. We know there's a demand for a service from Sheerness to Dover. We know, well, what again is it will be path, the path is there, but they haven't got the stock.
Yeah. And
It's something, but they know that
Yeah.
the thing is more new stock coming on. So it could release some of the older stuff.
yeah, that I know that's something that they're looking at potentially trying to do now that the Network Rail and Southeastern management are now combined, so they can hopefully start to look at some of this sort of stuff. And I think on some of the other issues you've raised, these can be picked up as things to keep an ear out for on the bus forum as well, you know, particularly around that having the right provision along the route. And I think as well, this was raised at a previous meeting with the bus companies, as well as the highways issues and how that causes the delays to the buses, which do feed into making that more of an issue with them being late arrivals. I think for the Sheerness line as well, this is something that I've been raising because obviously it goes through Kemsley.
Yeah.
There's a lot of lost revenue on that line.
Yeah.
And so part of the issue, they say, is it's not a big revenue making line. But the reason why is because there's no ticket barriers at Sheerness. So a lot of people do not pay for their train travel. You can get off at Sheerness and you can get on at Sheerness and get off at Kemsley free of charge. That is happening a lot. They have stepped up their revenue inspections on there, and on one afternoon, I believe it was, they issued 140 tickets for people having no train tickets.
What other information I've got from that is when I had a meeting with the work Reed a few months, and said, "Oh, we've got surveys ready to go, but we're still waiting to hear about them."
Okay. All right, that's something we can chase. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, one thing that could be done, one of the problems is if you look at
we are just going to have to wrap up this item soon. There is a 20-minute. Yeah.
I want to get more information, but I want to do more research.
Okay. Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. That's good. And it's good that we've got a couple of things there for the attendees at the bus group to take forward. But I do think we need to keep pushing on this issue about the lost revenue on that line. It's something that I know you've raised quite a few times, that there is big demand on that line and the train company don't recognise it on their ticket sales. But that's because there's no requirement to buy a ticket if you don't have to put it in a ticket barrier. So that is a big issue. And like I say, there was some joint work between Southeastern, British Transport Police and the police at stations and on that line quite recently, and the results were astonishing. Absolutely astonishing. If you can get 140 in one day of action, that's 140 people that were travelling free of charge, and it's the rest of us that are paying for that. So
next meeting, 2 bus companies and Network Rail agreed to come.
Right, okay, I didn't actually know that. At the next meeting, we've got the 2 bus companies and Network Rail at that. I know that part of the reason why we wanted all 3 is because at previous meetings where we were discussing KCC's transport strategy, people were talking about how buses don't line up with when you might need to catch the train, which makes taking the bus to the train station less of a suitable option for people if you get there and you just missed the train. And how actually we need to integrate that more to make that a more attractive option for people. So that's great that we will have that at the September meeting. Again, this is an item that's always on these agendas. So if people do have issues that they want to bring forward, as our contributors today have, please make sure that you do so. And there aren't any comments online, are
No,
there?
nothing.
No. Okay. Agenda item 11, which is local issues to be raised. Do members have any issues you would like to raise on behalf of local residents or communities? Councillor Winkles.
Yeah, one ongoing issue at the moment, as we know, Bill, is issue. Very first thing, not the break. We've had 3 invasions there. Months. I know myself, asking for some branch out in beds, concrete pillars. Be right to be sustained pillars.
No.
Really given a confidential on it. That's for us to decide, obviously, as councillors, but something that's got to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And actual fact, it wouldn't be the whole thing. Not been that from the town. That's some of it is already expensive. That basically company is CCT cameras picked up that they are coming in 1 week each without.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
So that is the bit, main bit that really has got to be fixed off, because even that's the way, it's got the small pony.
Yeah.
So it's, anyway, so that is something other people are going to get this.
No.
In a month.
No, I appreciate the impact that's had, and obviously with the impact on the country park as well, as one of the neighbouring ward councils have been heavily involved as well in knowing this. And I think you're right, making sure that there is something to address that issue so that the locality doesn't become something that is as desirable to pitch up at is really important. And yes, I think the sort of analysis of how they've been getting on has shown that it's not necessarily that there's an issue with the whole park. Sometimes bits of it you're never going to get access because there's always cars parked nearby and all sorts of things. So it's making sure that the interventions, if funding's tight, are where it's really needed to make sure that that public space is protected for its intended use. Councillor Mishra.
I was wondering whether the council strategy of dealing with drought invasions like these ones would be to deal with them much quicker, have some kind of immediate call response. Whether there are any county, other councils around the country that are able to deal with them really, really fast. And he's been able to stay for quite a long time. I was wondering whether the council would look into having a more immediate approach.
Yeah, I'll bring Charlotte in a moment, but I know that obviously it's something that officers will be reviewing as just a matter of course, because obviously there's been a number of these issues, and there are other authorities that have injunctions in place and stuff like that, which provide them other legal protections. But I think there's slightly different powers that are open to councils and the police, and it depends on the individual circumstances for what they can prove in order to use those things. So yes, it can feel like a lengthy process for people sometimes, but I'll bring Charlotte in.
Well, thank you, Chair. I think you've probably covered it, and I think that's the thing. The process that we have, and it has been reviewed at our management team this week, just to sort of ensure that that was the right process, as obviously yourself and other members have raised it. It is actually quite a slick process, but it does involve going to the magistrate's court and doing the welfare checks, and there's a whole process to do it. So it's not as quick as residents would like that to happen. There is an element of police being able to take more immediate, as the Chair has said. There's a number of criteria that have to be met on those. So there's been quite a lot of engagement with the police, and I believe there is a review taking place in a couple of weeks between the council officers on the ground that took the action and the manager of that team and the police team, just to sort of review what happened and whether everything was done that could have been done at the time, or if there's any lessons to be learned. But I say our internal process has been reviewed in terms of our powers. That does exclude the injunction, but in terms of their sort of standard powers, that process is as tight within the timeframes of doing welfare check, making applications to the magistrate's court that can be done from receiving that initial report. Injunctions have been taken out in the past, but that also can be quite a lengthy process. You do need to demonstrate that, and it's normally either on a locality, if you can evidence repeat, and consistent elements, and other powers haven't worked, or if it's a particular where we had a high court injunction a long time ago, that was on a particular family that kept coming, literally moving around lots of elements in different areas, and we were kind of chasing them at that point. So took out the injunction, but we had the evidence of taking those other steps with the existing powers. So I can assure you that it is being reviewed, and feedback that we've had initially is that our process was very tight. I think it's just about the size and the volume and our partnership working with the police. We need to obviously review it all collectively as well.
Yeah, I mean, I saw Inspector Basendale last Friday, and I took the opportunity to sort of discuss this with her because, as she pointed out, I've seen other local authorities where it's not taken quite so long. And obviously discussing with our officers, I've got a better understanding now of the various powers that are in place. I do wonder whether there could just be a member briefing maybe at some point that just outlines what our duties are, what our powers are, and how that works in practice. I think it's just something that would be helpful to be able to equip our members so that if there are any incursions in future or any welfare concerns that they have as well, that they know the process involved and who they need to contact and how they need to do that. I've got Councillor Watson, then Councillor Winklis.
Yeah. When I was bring up the high street and the empty shops, especially that we have on the high street, when you can ask economy and region to perhaps give a report on it, because I feel whether the right action will be taken to try and encourage more business into Sittingbourne. We've got the forum that has got a number of large units empty, and then we've had a report saying that the new investment company that involved before wants to put flats above the forum. So I think what we do need to have is a robust idea of what we can do with the high street. Because the knock on from us having empty shops on the high street is we do tend to have a lot more antisocial behaviour. Because we've got with our rushing the doorway now, we have some companies as well.
Yeah.
And school holidays. But I would like to know whether we can ask
I will.
Yeah.
I'll undertake to raise that with the vice chair of that committee.
Yeah.
But no, I will. I'll raise that with the chair as well, and I'll see what we can do. And again, whether that's us looking at something committee strategically on that, or whether actually it's some sort of briefing as well, which looks at all the various things we are already doing, which just explains to members, and then moving on from that, we may wish to take a look at it. So,
sorry, I was.
Yeah, I noticed that the old Barclays building, part of Brenchley House, it's a nice historic building. Some of the windows have been put through, the porch areas starting to fall apart. It'd be a real shame if we start to lose some of the historic aspects of these as well, because they're neglected. And we can all see the state that the old cinema's in as well. It's really difficult to see bits of our heritage being affected by that as well. Councillor Winklis.
On this issue, since we've been involved, I've built it all up. The Parliament Act of 1994, Section 17, etc.
Yeah.
I've asked him whether he based the production time some parliamentary bill. As a member's parliamentary bill, to see if this legislation could be amended. We've got a discussion. Something that he said. One of the things he did say, he did feel that in that it's like be able to get it through Parliament because the travellers before that us in this room, travellers have a lot of ancient rights. So he told whether that can do or not, I don't know. But I have approached him on this because obviously it's
well, yeah, and if you're talking about the powers, then obviously it's not about one community or another. It's about any sort of illegal incursion. You know, it doesn't have to be from the Gypsy and Roma community or the traveller community. You know, you could be dealing with a rave at the country park at some point, and you'd also want to move them on, and the same powers would have to be used. Not that I'm suggesting the country park is a good location for a rave, by the way, but yeah, there's all sorts of things that other places have experienced as a result of this, which is why they have these injunctions. It's not about one community or another. It's about the powers finding court time. You know, we would all like our courts to be focused on finding time to prosecute criminals who are, we're having to wait ridiculous amounts of times for them to be served, you know, their time, or for justice to be served. So clogging court time up with stuff like this, if the process can be simplified, obviously I'd welcome MPs looking at it. Sorry, there was a hand raised here, Councillor Gibson.
Thank you. So, two fairly quick things, Chair. First one is the traffic issues on Bell Road, Cranky Lane, and so on. People to be aware that I've written to the cabinet member on highways to have a look at the secrets in there. And in terms of anybody thinking it's not really that serious, I can assure you that it is, because of the road base that it switches down to. You know, there, people doing U-turns on Bell Road, and then lo and behold, disasters was averted. When somebody else got frustrated, she's been stuck in traffic for a long time, decided to do a quick U-turn. It was far too quick, hit the railings and into the flat of an elderly couple who were sat there doing a jigsaw in the wind at the time. So, you know, it is quite a serious matter for us, and I've had fairly full either telephone box involved or top-up box about it, and, you know, about it. So, just to say that there is some.
I'm sure every taxi driver, bus rider, driver would welcome something along those lines.
The idling stuff as well. So it's environmental stuff that's impacted too. It's not just those issues. And the other one is we've had an absolute plethora of flying tipping on Bell Road, right opposite, quite embarrassing for me, I feel, our road council offices. And it has taken quite some time. Just to get rid of it, but quite clearly, there's information there to see that disappointing if we don't seem to have been able to capture and all prosecutions. Because what that then does is we clear it away. The very next day, as there is right now, if you go there, the bed city has been dumped in exactly that same place. And that area doesn't look great to start with because of the building site, the boardings, because there. We're starting to get lots and lots of live posting on there. So again, that's it was out for hours. We've got to go time into those places, to look out on that is great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Cheeseman.
Yeah. You've got the crossroads, you've got the yellow box junction, which is fading northern. We did have a note saying that's going to be a camera put in there, but then that's happening now. But the times you can avoid going into the box junction, because I don't go into it. I come down and I just wait to make sure my way's clear before going over. Traffic don't, and you end up with it's going green my way, but I can't move because cars coming left and right, and now carrying on because they were stuck in the box junction and they're carrying on, if they can. So that's what's causing this chaos.
Yeah, I know that was the box junction issue is looked at by JTB. I don't know whether there could be an update on that, whether we can find out. I believe they were looking at consultation costs, and I know KCC are rolling cameras out, ticket issuing cameras out at other locations around bus lanes and things like that. Just before I bring in other contributions, I know that Mark Last was going to raise under this item about the Lakeview Village Hall. He's been working with users there because they need a new board of trustees. So again, and a number of people have now come forward, including some of the users and people on the estate, but they would obviously welcome if there's anybody else. So if people have connections, family members with the Great Eastall estate who would be interested in joining that new board, so they can keep that important hall facility running. It's well used by local groups, but if people have anything as well, he's been working with them, and obviously we can pass their details on to the new members who are coming forward to hopefully keep that running. Let's have a point here.
Yeah, it's a good way we can get grid estates to provide urban business site century 106.
I don't know, I can't talk about something obviously that's going through a inspectorate hearing at the moment, but yes, there's still some determination around those applications anyway. So yes, I'm not sure that we can necessarily get into that tonight. Are there any other points from members? No, that's great. So we'll move on to agenda item 12, matters to be referred to service committee chairs for consideration.
The only one that I've noted is the High Street and issue.
Yes, I'll make sure that I do that as vice chair of the committee. I will speak to the chair. Okay. That's the last agenda item, which means this meeting comes to a close at 8:40 p.m. Thank you very much, everybody.